So I'm going to jump in first to fears versus facts about buying a home. And this is just kind of like an overview. And a lot of people are like, well, I can't afford to buy a home right now. And the fact is, until you do the math, you don't know what you can or can't afford. There's a lot of factors that go into a home. And I think the most important thing I always tell people is that buying a home is a journey. It is a journey that you go on through your entire life. It is not that you're going to buy your perfect dream home tomorrow or that next month, right? You don't start with your dream home. You start with what we call a starter home, and that may be a smaller home than one you would prefer. That might be a condominium. You're not going to be able to immediately jump right in from where you might be renting right now or living with family or friends or whatever into a 4-bedroom house with a pool, right? We all wish we could do that. That would be amazing American dream, but the reality is that that's not necessarily something that most of us have the financial ability to do. So you really have to kind of work with a lender to talk through the numbers and figure out what makes sense for you. Does it make more sense for you to potentially rent now versus buy? And that's something that a lender can help you go through. The reason a realtor can't necessarily answer all those questions for you is because I don't necessarily, there's a lot of things that go into what you can afford. That could be your credit report. It could be how much debt you have. You may have student loan debt. You may have personal debt on a credit card, how much money you make, all those different types of things. I always tell my clients, it's not my, I don't want to have to, know all the ins and outs of your financial life, right? My job is to help you find a home and help you like, you were asking like, what's the best price? What's the best neighborhood? What home's going to work for you? Really, those conversations about your financial world go on with your lender, and your lender is going to be able to walk through and understand all that type of stuff. And then once you have all those conversations with the lender, which a realtor can connect you with, then they're going to kind of say, okay, you're now able to purchase a home for $800,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever that number is. Maybe it's only $300,000. They're going to be able to share that information with you in the form of a pre-approval. So I'll dive more into that later as well. The next fear is I should wait until the market gets better. The reality is the best time to purchase a home was 10 years ago. Don't we all wish we purchased a home back in, 10 years ago and see how much it would have appreciated now? And a lot of times people are like, well, the market goes up and down. Well, yes, the market goes up and down, just like the stock market goes up and down. Don't we all wish that we bought Google stock when it was, $40 and now it's, 100 and I don't even know what, 194 or something, and it's split 10 times type of thing. Don't we wish we had maybe invested in PayPal or in Tesla or, the list goes on and on of things that we wish we had invested in. And the reality is there's never a bad time to buy the right home. And so looking through properties and understanding what you can afford lets you then, with a lender is going to allow you to then make the determination of what might be the right home for you right now. Once again, as you go on that journey through, I said, no, not PayPal. Okay, take another example, but PayPal was very successful at one point. Maybe not today, correct. Okay, the next one will be, I don't have the money for a down payment. And, there's this misnomer out there that you need to have 20% down when you purchase a home. And that traditionally has been correct, that traditionally over, back in the days, it used to be that you need to have 20% to make a down payment. And that's really hard to do in a state like California, just because the cost of living is expensive. But the reality is there's a lot of other options that you can put down a lot less than 20%, and they have their pros and cons, and that's another thing that you obviously should talk to a lender about. The next one is I can't afford to buy a home because my credit isn't very good. And that may be the case. You may not have perfect credit, and not all of us have an 850 credit score or even a 700 credit score, but that's okay. The reality is working with some financial lenders to kind of understand where your credit is. And there's also companies out there that can help you move through repairing your credit. So there's certain things that you can do, be that pay off some of your debt. That could be working towards, making sure that you're not closing or opening new credit cards. There's a bunch of different steps you can go through to help improve your credit, but that takes time. So just because your credit isn't good today doesn't mean your credit won't be good next year, 5 years, or 10 years from now. But the reality is you need to try and work, if you want to become a homeowner, to try and improve your credit. That's something it's important for you to continue to work on. So few more. I can't afford to buy my dream home. I was mentioning that at the beginning. It's a journey. You're never going to buy your dream home as your very first home. You look at buying something smaller, or maybe something in a less desirable neighborhood as your first home. And then maybe in 5 or 10 years, you're then able to take the equity that you've built up in that home and then sell that house and buy a bigger house, right? The other thing to keep in mind is that things change. You may be single today and in a relationship in 5 years from now. You may, whatever job you're in today may be totally different than the job or career you're in 10 years from now. So, you have to look at this as your life is going to change. None of us have a crystal ball that's going to tell us what the future holds for us. And so the best thing for you to do is potentially start investing in real estate now for yourself, or some people out there might be interested in investing in real estate for someone else, like a rental property. Those are all things. I don't really dive into investment properties tonight, but a lot of these same things apply to that. And so it's important to think about all of this as a journey. I should wait until I'm more certain about my domestic future. Well, the reality is, what's the big thing that's on everyone's mind right now that we're unsure of? The election that's in like 2 weeks from today. My goodness. Obviously that has a lot of people wondering what should be the next step. You may be saying, well, maybe I need to wait till I'm married or partnered or ready to have a kid or whatever the scenario is. The reality is we don't know what the future is going to have. And so, yes, you can wait, but if you look back in your life to 10 years ago, were there things 10 years ago that you were thinking back, oh, I need to wait until, I'm ready to buy a home? Have you been thinking about buying a home for 5 years? Like ultimately we can end up in analysis paralysis where we kind of sit forever, never making the jump from renting into home ownership. And the important thing to keep in mind is when you're paying rent, that money that you're paying to rent, you're never seeing again. It's going to your landlord, it's going into their bank account, and maybe helping them pay off their mortgage. They may own that property that you're living in outright. But the reality is, at the end of the day, that money that you're paying towards rent is disappearing, and you are never getting any other benefit out of it other than the 30 days that it's paying for you to continue to live in that apartment. Versus when you own a home and you're paying money toward your mortgage, you're building up equity in that home. You're building up the ability for that home to appreciate. And maybe it appreciates 100,000, maybe 200,000. There's some people who double their money if they live there long enough. I mean, imagine the number of people that live in California, the baby boomer generation, that are living in homes that they may have purchased for $50,000 or $80,000 back in the 70s that are now worth, $1 million or more. So they've more than doubled their money. They've, tenfold their money, depending on how long you live there. Buying a home seems way too complicated. It is complicated. They're not going to sugarcoat it for you, but you are all taking the right step by coming to this class to learn more about that process. And that's why it's so important for you to hire a realtor who can hold your hand and be your consultant throughout the whole process, right? You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to stumble through it. There are people out there like myself who can help you through the process and help ensure that all your questions are being answered and that you understand the process from start to finish and that you're not trying to just figure out on your own. And the last one is, I should pay off my student loan debt before buying a home. That varies depending on person. Student loan debt doesn't prevent you from buying a home. It's just another factor that gets factored in when a lender is looking at what your debt to income ratio is. They're going to say, like, if you have $1 million in student loan debt, yes, maybe that might make it difficult for you to buy a home. But, depending on how much you have, if you have a smaller amount, they're going to factor that in and may be able to tell you what type of property you can own. So maybe you won't be able to qualify for purchasing a single family home in California, but maybe you would qualify for purchasing a condo, for example. So until you actually sit down with the lender and talk through all those different types of things, you're not going to know the answer to that.